The Atreides decide to hobnob with local distinguished guests over a dinner party. Like all good dinner parties, this one focuses on old customs, big personalities, and at least one spy.
Did you just say hobnob?
I did. I thought I'd try to work that word in somewhere today, and it just happened to fit here.
Perfect. Hey, we're the doctors who read stuff. My name is Chris.
I'm Chip.
And I'm Brian.
And as Brian said, we're discussing the Atreides dinner party tonight. Hobnob. Well done.
This was a really fun scene. I really dug this scene a lot.
Yeah, it was.
Because
It was. Yeah, I agree. It was interesting. There was like political intrigue.
and it felt like there were just so many things that we learned about these characters without the narrator having to tell us. You know, we ended up getting some insights like the fact that the Duke is obviously very concerned about the people that he is the Duke of,
Hmm.
being very particular with the water and all the way down to his interactions with people and not just how he interacts with the servants, but how he interacts with, the water
The the
magistrate.
water shipper, I think
It's
they called him. Yeah, like
yeah,
Yeah,
Lingar Butte. I think Butte was his name. Maybe.
yep.
sounds right.
Yeah.
Boy,
I
what
had
a
a,
go ahead.
and I think this one's interesting too because so much of it surrounds, centers around the Atreides and the party and all the guests, but it's really, and I don't want to spoil things that are coming, but it's kind of the last of the high point of the Duke in power, in control of Arrakis, or seemingly in control before things start to really change. So it kind of shows him kind of in this element before things go south. So,
Well,
and I
and
don't think that spoils anything. It just
no,
that it's going to happen
No.
because Herbert's already told you it's going to happen.
right.
Well,
So
and as soon as I kind of clued in on that, as soon as the Duke was talking about, oh, there's my son Paul talking with these other people, and he is such a good speaker, he's going to be a great torchbearer for the Duke. He is the great ducal heir.
yeah.
And it's like, all right, as soon as anyone says that in a book or a movie, I'm like, well, they're out of here soon.
Yeah, and I think it might have been Jessica or Paul, like when he gets up when the dinner's starting after he does the whole like changing of the water basin custom, and it was basically like one of those two made the observation that he was like just this desperate man clinging to a shred of control, basically.
Yeah,
So
Hmm.
yeah,
I remember that line.
the interesting thing to me was that with the water basin, so he like vetoed that custom because it was not a nice custom, right?
No.
um, but the servant that he told to take the basins out, he was like, oh, she was going to sell the towels to everybody outside, and that's why she was meant. So it's just like it kind of mirrors real life, because if something like that would happen today, there would be people that would take advantage of it to try to profit from it, to better themselves from it. So it,
Mhm.
that was kind of a mirror to me of actual human behavior.
Yeah. It was kind of sad to read that, although I could totally see how, how her proximity to power was going to influence her status over her peers. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I was glad to see that, I don't know, maybe with his humanistic leadership, maybe he was going to take better care of her because who knows what the prior Duke was doing to her if he didn't pay her very well or whatever else. But
Sure.
he seems to be much more a man of the people, which Kynes kind of keeps pointing that out
Right.
too.
Well, and that's one of the things that kind of, and I was going to talk about Kynes a little bit, but it kind of wins Kynes over to begin respecting the Duke. He was there to basically sabotage the Duke's plans, but the more he's around the Duke, the more he respects him, and the more, he comes to have a genuine affection for the Duke. I thought it was interesting in this one, just how Kynes is perceived by the other guests, and how there's a lot of almost, I don't know if it's outright fear, but it's a lot of, they really watch their words around him. Or they, if he says something, everybody kind of listens and their tune changes. So it just kind of reinforces his importance. And we kind of talked about that, I think, in the one of the last discussions that we had, just who is this guy? And, I think when they did the ornithopter flight out to the spice miner, that his men were saying stuff that, he would give them a look and they'd shut up, so, but it felt like it was more of that at the dinner table with other more distinguished guests from Arakeen society that were kind of treating him the same way. So this dude seems kind of important.
Yes, and you can maybe wonder whether they're treading on thin ice because he's the Imperial planetologist, or because somebody, like, I think accused him of like going native or something like that. And you almost get the impression that it's the second one. They're not watching themselves because he's under the purview of the Emperor per se.
Yeah.
So, but there's a point where I want to say the Atreides are talking to this water shipper about water custom, and they, like, Chezka actually mentions terraforming Dune, and Leto is like observing Kynes, and he almost becomes like transfixed by her when she said this. And we go to his point of view, and the prophecy states, "And they shall share your most precious dream." And so his response to Chezka was, "Do you bring the shortening of the way?" And in the old tongue, that translates to Kwisatz Haderach. And so Jessica's
I was just...
So did the Missionaria Protectiva plant that legend here as well, or is something else going on?
I didn't pick up on that. That's good.
Yeah, that was good. And then when they're actually talking about the water necessary to kind of change the face of Arrakis or to terraform it, I think Kynes, or was it the banker who said there isn't enough water? And then the Duke kind of turned to Kynes, and Kynes basically said there may be enough water. But Paul picked up pretty quickly that he was lying, that he knew, that there is enough water. But he just doesn't want anyone to know that there's enough water, that there's water stores in the desert somewhere that, they could use to terraform Dune, but he's hiding it. So.
Boy, I can totally see that too. Like, that sounds like a shady politician who's just there to, let's keep this thing going. Let's milk these people for all it's worth. But I'm looking at this planet, and from my point of view, Dune seems relatively uninhabitable. You wouldn't decide to go vacation there. So all of the people who are there outside of the ducal party, outside of the Empire, they were born there. They had to have had enough water at some point. I mean, theoretically over the years, otherwise they would have died out. So where is all of this other water being stored, and why is it gone?
Yeah, and when you think of the kind of correlation of Dune to our world, and that if you think of the spice as oil and the Mideast and the deserts where we drill for oil, it feels kind of similar to where that isn't necessarily a place people would want to inhabit, but because of the resources that are there are there's a necessity that there's a lot of money to be made in
Good point.
in living there.
Well, that's clearly why the Empire has a presence there.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
The interesting parts to me focused more around the banking representative. So Chezka sees pretty quickly that he's actually a Harkonnen agent. And
Paul picks up on that too.
And the girl who is like flirting with Paul is working with the Harkonnen agent.
Yeah.
So
was she the daughter of the still suit manufacturer?
Yeah.
That's what she was portrayed to be.
So, and this is Jessica's thoughts from the book, going back to the Reverend Mother lecturing. A thing to note about any espionage and or counter-espionage school is the similar basic reaction patterns of all its graduates. Any enclosed discipline sets its stamp, its pattern upon its student. That pattern is susceptible to analysis and prediction. So that's how she deduced that it was Harkonnen, because she was able to read those patterns. So, yeah.
And then the banter between Paul and the banker almost comes to blows.
Yeah.
You know, they're
It
really kind
does.
of needling each other, and Paul's kind of giving some analogies, not like a typical 15-year-old would, but you know, it comes to the point where I think it was the smuggler started laughing at some, you know, kind of a joke that Paul told that had a double meaning, and then I think it was Kynes that said something about, you know, one baits and Atreides at his own risk, you know, directly to the banker. So
Was that
I
the
thought
part
that
where
there was a
he?
lot of fun. Go ahead.
There was some good wordplay there. I really appreciated the story. Didn't we read about the fisherman,
Yeah, that was the one
the
that
fisherman
Paul
who died, who
talked
drowned,
about, where
and
he drowned, but it
people?
was in his drawing room
Yeah,
or in the drawing room. You know that he drowned because the other fishermen basically used him to escape drowning, but it was in his own drawing room or in the drawing room.
but I just love the imagery of, again, here's a world that's completely dry, and then you're talking about drowning, and it's like, well, what on earth is
Mm-hmm.
drowning?
Yeah.
So like it really a good metaphor that is easy for the reader to grasp, but these people on Dune or on the planet just have no clue what they're
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this earlier, Chip, but everybody kind of seems to regard Kynes as a force not to be reckoned with, and that's pretty clear with the banking representative. I mean, there was
Yeah.
a couple of times where Paul or Jessica made the observation that the banking rep was actually terrified of Kynes and was afraid that he was going to die.
Yeah. Um, there was a couple other, and I can't recall specifics, where you know, Jessica and Paul could kind of see through Kynes's speech that he was giving like more half truths and not really telling, you know, the full thing. I think it was when they were talking about what's in the deep desert and some other things like that, that Kynes would kind of dance around the subject. Well, not much is known, but you know, a few people venture down there, but you know, he obviously knows that there's more to, you know, he knows more about Dune than anybody, or more about the planet Arrakis than anybody. But
And it's interesting to note that the smuggler seems to be in league with Kynes as well.
mm-hmm.
Like that was a dynamic that Paul picked up on. But Kynes made an interesting statement on the importance of water on Arrakis, and he said, "You're dealing with the law of the minimum. Growth is limited by that necessity which is present in the least amount, and naturally the least favorable condition controls the growth rate." And I think, you know, Jessica was he mentioned that to Jessica and she knew what it was, and he was like, well, holy crap, she knows what that is. And it again, it goes back to this concept of terraforming the planet. And here we are in the 60s talking about terraforming, which is a science fiction idea that I don't think really gained a lot of traction until maybe the 70s or 80s. I might be wrong, but
I don't remember. I remember there was some, was it a Green Mars and some other books where it was all about terraforming Mars, but I don't remember. You know, I guess I wasn't alive when this one was written, but yeah, I don't remember that being a big thing in fiction until probably the late 70s, early 80s. You know, so maybe it started here.
What I really thought was kind of interesting was that throughout this entire dinner party, you've got kind of these exchanges and these observations. It's almost like a game of chess happening. And then basically the king comes off the table because Leto has to leave and puts Paul up in his chair. And it was fascinating up till the very end. Paul did a great job, but it was, because and the banking representative was like needling him again, and Kynes came to his defense, and it came out that Leto left because the carryall was found, seemed to have been stolen by a Harkonnen agent, but it was really a coded message. But Paul's misstep really was, I think, him boasting about the carryall. I was like, I knew all along we'd find it. It was only a matter of time.
Yeah,
that was just oh no.
He was so suave the entire time, all the way through this book up until this line, and it was like, really, Paul? Why did you have to go and say that?
But remember, he's only 15.
I suppose. And like most 15-year-olds, they have a bit of an ego.
Well, and so I've been recently rewatching the Star Wars prequel trilogy with my kids, and Attack of the Clones has some of the most cringy romance dialogue between Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman. And I think about this, and I'm like, what he's saying, I could totally see like an 18-year-old kid saying.
Yeah.
Who's never been around girls and basically grew up in a monastery. Does it work on the screen? Not really. Does it kind of maybe have some grounds in reality? Probably. So,
sadly.
Yeah. But yeah, it's something that, a 15-year-old would probably say to try to exert some dominance. I don't know. Maybe that's not the right word.
Yeah.
But
I think it's probably that like a precociousness where he's trying to come across older than he is.
Yeah.
And, was it, I can't remember if that was before or after, because the smuggler then lifts, his flag and gives a toast to Paul, but basically says to young Paul Atreides, still a lad by his looks, but a man by his actions. And I think that was right after the first kind of fight. Yeah. And then I think it's when, after that, the Duke had headed out at that point, but the carryall comment came after that, I think.
Yeah, that was at the tail end of the chapter.
Which at that point, that was Paul's first time sitting in, like, he physically sat in his father's chair. He took the place of honor. It was kind of a passing of the guard.
There's some foreshadowing here.
Yeah, there is.
But the coded message behind the carryall message was that that the Harkonnens had tried to get a shipment of las guns. I don't know how you would actually say it, but
I said las, like laser.
Yeah. And I think the description in the book, basically, they're super powerful, they're dangerous, and I think illegal, aren't they? Did I read that right?
Potentially. But...
I understood it that way. Not sure if it's right, but that's how I took it.
But the Harkonnens don't care about laws.
Yes. But it's just kind of that, political maneuvering that's been constantly happening in the background throughout this entire book, and it feels like it's picking up steam rather quickly.
Yep.
So, but did we miss anything? I mean, a lot happened in this.
The only other thing that I think was really worth mentioning was the toast. I thought that was kind of an interesting happening where
Leto's toast.
Where he dumped the water out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was really like out of character. Like I was really surprised with how carefully he had been about water. What led up to that? That was just different.
I don't know.
So something was clearly on his mind, but I thought it was interesting how some people were clearly in opposition and wouldn't do anything. Some people blindly follow, and some people, like one guy pulled a flask out of his coat pocket and poured the water in there, pretending like he dumped it on the ground. It might have been,
Yeah, I don't know. That kind of was a surprise to me too. I didn't remember it from my previous reading, and I don't really know what his intent was there, except maybe just to test
I don't know.
everybody else there to see what they would do. I don't know.
Sure.
But yeah, good call out. Maybe we'll get some insight later.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Okay, so next time, this episode and the next episode are going to be a little different because previous to that we'd been reading 3 sections at a crack. This time we've only covered the 1. Next time we're only going to cover 2. So it's going to be Chezka and Thufir having a conversation, and then it's going to be the section focusing on Leto. So if you are reading along, that's what you need to do. Again, it's very difficult to give you page numbers when there are so many different versions of this book out there. But please, if you have comments, leave them below. If you liked this video, please click the like button. Please click subscribe. We'd love to have you along for future episodes. And thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Allons-y.